8 rap albums that flopped. The perception of what makes a good first week of a new album has changed drastically in the recent years. Long gone are the days of superstars selling over 1 million units in their first week. Nowadays, even A-list artists are unlikely to break 300,000, and only the generation's most successful superstars will see numbers in the 500,000 range. Most of this is due to the way that album sales are now calculated. With less physical copies of music being sold in favor for streaming content, it's harder to rack up sales. According to the music history titans like Billboard and RIAA, it takes 1,500 streams of an album's track to qualify as one sale. As a result, artists are moving less copies of an album, and now mostly survive on the revenue generated by tours and merchandise. But even though it seems that the music industry's sales figures have universally fallen, there are some albums that still manage to underperform. Whether it's because of poor rollout, unrealistic fan expectations, or a change in music metric technicalities, the past few years have given us some seriously unsuccessful albums. Before we start, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now here's 8 rap albums that have flopped. Number 8. Logic, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Logic has been a relatively controversial figure within the hip-hop industry since he made his debut in 2010. Fans of the rapper credit him with intense technical skill, an approachable everyman persona, and an accessibility to fans, while his critics categorize him as a fast rapper with corny lyrics and an overemphasis on his ethnicity. Despite this, for a majority of his career, Logic has managed to release albums that saw substantial success. Although he never reached the height of his peers in the 2010 freshman class, like Drake or J. Cole, Logic has enjoyed a loyal fan base that has allowed him to consistently sell upwards of 100,000 units within the first week of his project's release. However, Logic's 2017 release, Everybody, scored him his first true plunge into the mainstream eye. Mainly due to the success of the single 1-800-273-8255, the album moved roughly 250,000 units, which is nearly double of his previous album, Bobby Tarantino. Unfortunately for Logic, he found it difficult to replicate this success. 2018 to 2020 saw the rapper releasing 3 albums that were met with mixed to negative reviews. The third album, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, however, performed poorly commercially. Many fans felt the album was Logic's worst to date, filled with lazy, superficial subject matter and even more corny lines than normal. The album moved a mere 80,000 units its first week, almost half of the album before it, Young Sinatra 4. Luckily for Logic, his final album, No Pressure, has been hailed as a critical and commercial success, selling 221,000 units its first week, and allowing Logic to retire with his legacy intact. Number 7. Lil Yachty, Teenage Emotions. As the face of bubblegum trap, Lil Yachty was having an excellent run during 2015 and 2016. Amidst the release of his debut project Lil Boat, the rapper was seeing massive mainstream success due to his featured verses on Dram's Broccoli and Kyle's I Spy. Yachty was positioning himself to be the most valuable feature of 2017. This all led to massive hype for his debut studio album, Teenage Emotions. The album featured a stacked guest list, including Migos, YG, and even Diplo. However, the album was met with generally mixed reviews, and hardcore Yachty fans felt disappointed. The album was thought to have too much filler, and stylistically delved deeper into pop and pop punk than many fans were anticipating. The album managed to debut at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 200, but sold a mere 46,000 units in its first week. Yachty has continued to have inconsistent success, with his sales continuing a peak and valley pattern throughout the years, which is surprising to say the least, considering him having so much hype and major label backing. Number 6. Machine Gun Kelly, Binge. Back in 2018, it seemed like Machine Gun Kelly was about to have a good year. He was deeply entrenched in a feud with Eminem. Regardless of who won or lost, the publicity that MGK received from the beef with a much bigger artist was bound to be beneficial for his career. And indeed, MGK did begin to receive much attention from new fans, whose introduction to the artist was Rap Devil, a track aimed at Eminem in response to a quick diss on M's song Not Alike. Just 3 weeks after releasing Rap Devil, MGK released the 9-track EP Binge. The album was a stylistic departure from his previous works, leaning towards a more melodic, auto-tuned aesthetic. The stark contrast between the EP and Rap Devil alienated many new fans. The EP was an overall flop, It sold only 21,000 units in its first week, nearly a full 50% decline from its predecessor, Bloom, which moved 57,000 units its first week. His following album, Hotel Diablo, performed slightly better, selling 31,000 units in its first week. NGK's newest album, Tickets to My Downfall, is scheduled to release in late September of 2020, and is an even bigger stylistic departure for the artist. It will be a pop-punk album. Number 5. Lil Wayne, Rebirth. Lil Wayne has lived most of his life less like a rapper and more like a rock star. Since he began rapping at a mere 14 years old, Wayne has been one of the generation's most prolific, successful, and acclaimed artists. He has sold a whopping 120 million records worldwide, spawned numerous iconic hits, and has filled arenas around the world with rabid fans. So after living his life like many of the iconic rock stars of the 60s and 70s, it would make sense that he might feel inspired to integrate rock music into his own projects. Enter Rebirth, Wayne's 7th studio album released in 2010. On the album, Wayne integrates rock and pop-punk sounds into his music with the help of collaborators like Fall Out Boy, and paid homage to previous rock-rap groups like the Beastie Boys. Unfortunately for Wayne, his best efforts at creating a rock album were not well received. The album received almost universally negative reviews, bashing it as cliché and sounding like a parody of a rock album. Despite this, the album still managed to chart at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and sold 176,000 copies in its first week. And while those numbers would be a dream to the average artist, this squarely qualified Rebirth as a flop for Wayne, whose previous release, No Ceilings, was widely critically acclaimed, and whose last commercial release, The Carter 3, smashed sales projections with a whopping 1 million units moved in its first week. Number 4. Blueface, Find the Beat. When Blueface first achieved mainstream success with his viral hit, Thotiana, many people speculated that he may become the new face of West Coast rap. Spoiler alert, they were wrong. Before Thotiana, Blueface first found some traction through the single Respect My Crippin'. The viral success and memes from the song launched Thotiana into orbit, and established Blueface as an up-and-coming rapper, scoring him some cosigns from artists like Drake and Quavo. His EP, Dirtbag, experienced commercial success but was met with overwhelmingly negative critic reviews. In an attempt to capitalize on his current fame, Blueface announced that he would release his debut album, Find the Beat, but the project was repeatedly delayed. When it finally did release, it was met again with mixed reviews, and peaked on the US chart as a low-ranking 64th. Blueface might have had one of the worst first-week sales in the history of Cash Money Records, but there's no doubt he could make another hit in the future. Number 3. SMOKEPURPP, Florida Jit. In 2016, SMOKEPURPP was one of the rappers that had many people in the industry excited about the internet's budding SoundCloud rapper scene, coming up alongside other SoundCloud musicians such as XXXTentacion, Lil Pump, and Lil Peep. By 2017, Purpp had signed a joint record deal with Alamo and Interscope. At the same time, Purpp found some modest mainstream success with his track Audi. With the support of the single's success, his debut album Dead Star received moderate success as well. However, a series of delays in future projects greatly diminished the hype coming from Purpp's projects. The sequel to his first project, Dead Star 2, was released in 2019 and performed underwhelmingly, managing to peak at only number 86 on the Canadian chart. Most recently, Purpp released the 2020 album Florida Jit. The album was a massive failure, selling only 5,000 copies in its first week. The album failed to chart at all. Today, Purpp is best remembered for a hilariously bad freestyle rap on Tim Westwood TV, which funny enough has gotten more publicity than anything Lil Pump has done as of late. Number 2. Eminem's Revival. Eminem is one of the few rappers on this list whose sales metrics do not adhere to current industry trends. For the average rapper, moving over 100,000 units in a project's first week would be considered a massive success. For someone who's as established and backed by a rabid fan base as Eminem, that's not exactly the case. As one of the best-selling rappers of all time, it hasn't been uncommon for Eminem to see first-week sales that blow past the 600,000 mark. In fact, on 3 separate occasions, Eminem has exceeded 1 million units in its first week alone. So in 2017, when Eminem dropped his album Revival, the numbers were a shock to everyone. After a moderate hiatus from music to deal with his drug addiction, Mathers came back strong and released a total of 3 original albums prior to the release of Revival. All the albums performed well. The Marshall Mathers LP2, released in 2013, was a direct predecessor to Revival and sold a whopping 792,000 units in its first week. Unfortunately, Revival could not replicate these numbers. Credited to a relatively short album rollout and poorly received singles, the album sold a shockingly low 267,000 units, even lower than M's debut album, the Slim Shady LP. The flop started an era of insecurity and uncertainty for Eminem, who has grappled with the fallout even as recently as on his newest album, Music to Be Murdered By. And at number 1, we have 6ix9ine's Tattletales. When 6ix9ine was formally indicted by the federal government, it made national news. During his highly publicized court case, the public was exposed to the full truth about his public image. He had bought the support of the 9 Trey Blood Gang, and after some internal tension, was at risk of being murdered by the gang. During his court testimony, he openly cooperated with the federal government, and snitched on the gang members he had considered his family for months before. Because of his extensive cooperation, he was sentenced to a mere 2 years in prison, and was released after serving 14 months. Upon his release, the entire industry was abuzz with speculation about the performance of his upcoming album, Tattletales. Initial projections showed great success, anticipating sales of over 150,000 in its first week, and for a split second, it looked like he was going to meet these projections. However, due to recent changes in the way that Billboard, Nelson Music, and the RIAA counts bundled sales of music and merchandising, this projection quickly changed. The new rules knocked off a significant amount of physical orders that were not shipped quickly enough to qualify as first week sales. After these rules were taken into account, Tattletale's first week sales were an underwhelming 53,000 copies. While this is by no means the numbers he was looking for, it's definitely not bad for someone who almost spent over 40 years behind bars. So, do you think any of these albums were overly hated on? Let me know in the comments section. And before you leave, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to our channel.